for me, it shows that there's still good young people in this world. Not every young person is money hungry or want the next thing super fast, and it just kind of showed that they're loyal, and I think that speaks a lot about their personalities as well as the organization, the school itself, and it just showed that obviously you're gonna always get different opportunities, but what is okay with you? Like, what are you morally cool with?
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option. I am our host, Yogi Roth, and we're less than 2 weeks away. We're less than 2 weeks away from kicking this thing off, and let's go. And we are going to give you college football through the lens of the West Coast like you've never heard it, because it's never really been told. So with that, today's episode is one of the quarterbacks who truly own the conversation. Own the conversation, not just on the West Coast, but across the country for about a month in college football a couple years ago, NIL, that's right. It's Khalil Tate out the gate for 68. We're going to talk about that. Jim Thornby, welcome back. Thanks for all the hard work you are doing. And first, let's talk college football. Like, you got one more weekend of really off, I guess, but it's still week zero.
There's week zero. I mean, I know there's not a lot of like marquee games on the West Coast, but I'm sure a lot of people in Corvallis will be tuned in to watch Florida State and see DJU. Back in the ACC, so they're going to probably be interested to see how that all turns out. Some of the Mountain West schools are playing as well here in week zero, but yeah, still it's a real, for at least for the West Coast fans, it's a very small appetizer for what's about to come the weekend after.
Amen. All right, so I want to ask a quick follow-up to that before we get into today's episode presented by our founding partner 76, which is Khalil Tate. How do you think Oregon State fans will view DJU?
Good question. I think it won't be super negative. Obviously, with everything that happened with Coach Smith going to East Lansing, like, there's a lot of heat on him. And I would imagine probably Aiden Childs as well, like, for going with him. But it seemed like, and this is obviously just from an outsider perspective, it seemed like, DJU's time at Corvallis was done anyway. Like, they were, if Jonathan Smith was still at Oregon State this year and Aiden Childs was still there this year, like, looks like they were going to be like, it's now his ball to run with. So I think in that respect, they don't feel as, and again, I'm speaking for an Oregon State fan, when I would feel that they're not as abandoned as they are by him and Childs and Damian Martinez going to Oregon State, or, the two defensive players going down to USC. I think from that level, there's probably a lot more of those hurt feelings than there is with DJ.
Yeah, I only bring it up because he is really unique. Like, he went there for a fresh start after dealing with the vitriol of the Clemson fans and fans around the country. Remember, he came out with Bryce Young, right? He wanted to go to USC, didn't end up going to USC, went to Clemson, back to Trevor Lawrence, and away we go. And now here we are, coming into his third school. And I just think Beav fans appreciate him. Like, that's my net on it, of like, thanks for coming. Like, you really helped take our quarterback play to a level that we wanted to get it to, help train Aiden Childs to potentially be the heir apparent. And then, of course, like, the bottom fell out to a certain degree. Jonathan Smith leaves, Aiden leaves. And you're right. Like, what would have happened if everybody was still there? It would have been a fun conversation, because in the draft this past spring, he wasn't going to be one of the top guys. And he's probably making more money than the late round NFL guys I'd project at Florida State. And he's an amazing young man. So I think anybody who's been around him just falls in love with him. We'll try to get him on this show throughout the season. I ran into his dad the other day, texted him as I saw his other son, Mateo Uyunglele, at Oregon, playing as a defensive end, and just a phenomenal family. So I wanted to ask you that because it's unique, where I don't think there's vitriol for him leaving. I think there's actually a lot of respect for him leaving. So let's talk about respect and today's guest. Khalil Tate. Khalil Tate was a high school quarterback here in Southern California, but also a dynamic athlete. Played safety, played wide receiver. I remember seeing him at Elite 11, and he would throw a pass, he would run a route, and he would defend the route. And then he would just kind of keep that circle going at the LA Regional, which I think was just really unique. He had to bide his time and sat behind Brandon Dawkins and then took the nation by storm. Jim, it's no surprise you are an Arizona Wildcat alum and proud supporter. There we go. You didn't miss a beat, brother. What did you think about Khalil Tate and when that happened? And what were you most interested in as we sat down with him earlier this summer in person for an interview?
Well, for one, I mean, he got his start so young. I mean, he was so young when he got to Arizona. Started as a 17-year-old against UCLA. So that in itself was already unique. But then it was, when is it going to be his time? Because he went to Arizona because they were the ones that let him be a quarterback. So there was, how is that all going to work out? And how did he fit with what Rich Rodriguez did? But I think there's always going to be that bond with you and him and our friend JB Long, who called the game with you there, just because that game, really put him on the map. He won, Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week, 4 weeks in a row, and Mr. October, for Khalil Tate, taking over for Reggie Jackson, also a Pac-12 alum from his,
There you go.
From his Arizona State days. Although they weren't in the conference at that point, he was still.
You can claim him though.
We still claim him. We claim everybody right now. You looked at the Olympics; people were claiming left and right. So, so it's kind of cool, like that bond that you guys will always have from that night in Boulder.
Yeah. So let me take you into that night, and then we'll get into the conversation. It's really fun as an analyst to walk the field in pregame. I love getting into the stadium 4 hours in advance. You have a bunch of meetings, you prepare all your stuff. And in Boulder, it's a beautiful, intimate environment at Folsom Field. I mean, there is no chance to ever have a track around that stadium. The fans are on you. So much so, if you're a sideline reporter, you actually can't walk behind the bench to get to the other side of the field. You have to climb up into the stands to get to the other end zone. So think about that for a second when you're watching a game this fall. But I'm on the field in pregame, and I start talking to a couple of the offensive coaches. And we had Arizona the previous week, and Brandon Dawkins was the starter. And I said, hey, what's up with Khalil? Like, I've been reading a lot about Khalil Tate. Like, think he'll get a shot? And the coach's quote to me has stood out, and I'll remember it forever, because he looks me right in the eye and he says, Yog, he's got a shot. He had a great week of practice. And if he gets a shot, I don't know if he's going to let anybody else come in. And I just said, oh, cool. Like, you're thinking next year, or if they start losing a bunch of games. And on that night, in that stadium, Brandon Dawkins runs to his left, which is Colorado's sideline. And because it's so tight, runs into what was the bench, which was right next to the wall. And he hits his leg, I believe. He starts limping. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Here comes the Khalil Tate show. And he comes into this game, and here come JB Long and I, and we're trying to prep for the moment. And it was as though he was running at double speed. Like, he was a different man. Like, in Colorado's defense, it's not like they were terrible. Like, they had fit the run well. They had fit QB run well. They make plays in the back end. They had a couple of NFL players. Bro, they couldn't even try to touch him. I mean, they looked like some bad flag football that I coach in my youth team here in Southern California, in terms of just being out of position. They looked out of position, but actually they weren't. It was just Khalil being so unique and athletic. He takes the nation by storm, and it was such a unique moment for JB and I, because we recognized it almost like mid-third quarter, like, we are watching history. We are watching a Christian McCaffrey moment, a Reggie Bush moment, like just an Andrew Luck moment, right, with his stiff arm against SC way back in the day. Like, it was that. And then we got to carry it. I think we called the next game and maybe another one after that, and ride that wave, which was Khalil Tate out the gate for 68 was the call from JB Long, as he took just a quarterback draw, for a house call. And that was one of the most epic runs I've ever seen. I know you loved it. I know he loved it. He and I talked about it many times. We talk about that. We talk about NIL. We talk about, getting paid on NIL, because he's part of that group that will get paid in the settlement. What does that even mean? Then we talk Arizona, right? And his famous tweet, which, we all know what happened around that. I think you'll love it. I think you'll love his humility. I think you'll enjoy the conversation. And I most importantly, I think you'll learn something about Khalil Tate that you did not know. He's one of my favorite people in my entire career that I've been around. I think he's just a phenomenally thoughtful young man. And I think you'll enjoy this thoughtful conversation presented by our founding partner, 76. Here it is, Khalil Tate at the gate.
Khalil Tate, man. Whenever I hear your name or read your name or see that smile, so many memories pop up for me. So many. I mean, from interviews we've done, podcasts we've done, you as a teenager at the Elite 11 summer camps. But really, as you've gotten older, where I net out is like the solo Khalil Tate. Like you've always been a giver. I'm curious for you, like, because people put labels on you all the time,
Right.
I imagine, like how you define you.
I would say I like to wear a lot of different hats. That's my main thing. Just trying to fully show who I am as a person. I feel like in football, it's easy to kind of just be a football player. You're wearing a helmet, but there's also a side to it when you aren't wearing a helmet. And who are you when you aren't wearing a helmet, which is like 70% of the other side of the game. So my main thing is just trying to wear different hats. Just show different people that I can do different things. I can be useful a lot of different ways other than scoring, far touchdowns and throwing the ball. So that's my main thing, just trying to show people and myself as well that, I can do multiple things. Even though I am really good at, a certain thing, I can do other things as well.
You're 25 years old now. You were 17 when you first started in college football. Just kind of nuts to think about that against a hometown team in UCLA. I think throughout your college career, you had crazy highs. We'll get into them. You probably had some lows.
For sure.
As well. How have you navigated post-college and people, when they see you, like I do, a memory is immediately evoked?
Yeah. I mean, it means a lot, having a lot of success and then having not a lot of success, it's humbling. I feel like going through that young, it helped me out a lot as far as my growth and my development, just because if I didn't go through that at that time, I'll be going through it later, which it can get tougher later because, you've been who you are in a sense for so much longer. So for me to actually be humbled a lot sooner than that, obviously, I wish everybody wish things could go perfectly, right? But that's not how life is. You have to kind of roll with the punches and, just get on board with what it is and, just see it for what it is, and don't fight the reality. That's the main thing.
What was the low point for you?
I would say my senior night. I didn't start. That's pretty low for me, in my opinion. So yeah, it's it was, like I said, it was humbling. I mean, I did what I could do, and I think for me that's kind of the thing that helps me deal with it. The fact that I was a stand-up person, didn't shame anybody. I could have, but I kind of just for me, I like to keep things in-house, and I like to just deal with it as it comes. And, everything happens how it's supposed to. So yeah.
Let's go to that night in Colorado, because that's really when your star shined brightest nationally.
Yeah.
And to paint a picture, I can remember this. I'm walking on the field in pregame, as most broadcasters are. You talk to the coordinators, you talk to the head coach, and I had asked about you. And the coach said, he had a heck of a week in practice.
Yeah.
We'll see if he gets his shot. Brandon Dawkins, who was the starter at the time, at that field in Boulder, Folsom Field's tight sidelines,
Right.
He gets tackled, goes out of bounds, hits the wall, comes out with an injury. You come in and literally rewrite the record books.
Yeah.
How did your life change that night? Did you feel it change that night, or was it just, this is just what Khalil Tate
It's
does?
crazy. I think, and I never told anybody this, but the week before we had a bye week. So I came back home, and my high school, Sarah High School in Gardena, one of the best high schools in California, in the state, in the world, they were playing against Chaminade. And I went to the game, and I was talking to Coach Scott Ottenberg, and we were just talking, and he was like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing well. I'm like, I'm not playing, so I'm not really doing the best. Just my sophomore season. I kind of sat down my freshman year, so I kind of felt like it was my chance or my turn, and I was still the backup. So I went back home, was talking to him after the game, and I was like, if they put me in, I don't think they'd take me out. Like I know that for a fact. And I told them that, and that was the bye week. So then that following week, we practicing for Colorado, and I felt a lot more locked in. I felt like I was a lot more serious about it. I did a lot of film study with my coaches, and yeah, I had a really good week of practice. And then it's crazy because during the Colorado game, like that first few series, I was just locked in a lot more. Like I was kind of really, obviously I'm always locked in, but I was a lot more in tuned. So in watching, Brennan go out there and, their sidelines are super close out there. They need to do something about that in Boulder. But and watching him go down, it was kind of surreal because as he went down and he stayed down for a little bit longer, I kind of looked around and they was like, Khalil, you ready? I'm like, oh, it's about to happen right now. So ended up going out there. I ran the offense. I did what Coach Smith and Coach McGee and Coach Richard wanted me to do, and it turned out pretty good.
I'd say that you turned out and kept turning out and earned out and out and out, and then the next year kind of happened for you.
Yeah.
Right. There's a coaching change. Eventually, to your point, like there's a position change, or not a position change, but you're not necessarily the guy.
For sure.
How did you navigate stardom?
Yeah.
And then whatever else happened next?
I think it was tough for me because I had that season that I did have my sophomore year, and then just like that, right after our bowl game against Purdue, we let go of Rich Rod. And it kind of happened like, I think it was in between that break between, when you get back in January and December. So just like that, we didn't have a head coach. And so for me, being the quarterback, right, I think I was 18. It was just kind of like, all right, I am the face. I am, we don't have Rich Rod anymore. So I have to kind of, go about myself differently. I have to help in finding a coach. And, me and the former AD, Dave Hickey, and President Robbins, we all collectively kind of, tried to figure something out, that made sense for us. And yeah, it was a lot though. It was, it happened all at once, I would say. It happened really fast. Like I said, that week period was kind of like, all right, no head coach. Now who's going to be the head coach? And I just had the season that I had, so I knew that it was a very important decision as far as I'm kind of making a decision for myself in a sense. Obviously you do when you pick a college, but in this case, having the success that I had, I have more ground to be able to make a decision and, chime in on what I want.
It was a different era then, which is crazy because you're not like in your 40s like I am. You're mid-20s, man. But now, if that instance happens, like, your star shines bright and people are probably offering you a dramatic amount of incentive to possibly join their team.
Right.
As well as you can transfer and nobody's gonna bat an eye. Like, if you put yourself in the same situation now, have you thought through, like, what would I have done?
Yeah, people often ask me, like, man, because a lot of people, when they think about NIL, they think about me, I guess, just because of that month of October for sure, and all the different things that possibly could have happened. But people often ask me, like, what you think you would have did? And I could easily say, like, I would have done X, Y, Z, but truth is, it's hard to kind of tell because it wasn't the reality, if that makes sense. So I could give some advice on what I could have done or how I would do it, but it might have been too much at once, and that's kind of thing that I try to give advice to the younger guys, but it's hard because I can't tell you what you're thinking. You know what I'm saying? I can kind of give you a blueprint of like what I think you should do as far as like the logical answer, right? But the logical answer is not necessarily the answer these days. It's more so about, getting to the next step, and obviously NFL for a lot of guys, but just for a lot of guys now, it's more about the now, which, you can't fault them because obviously, football doesn't last forever. So, you have different people making different decisions for different reasons. Everybody might make a decision based off of where they are in their life. Some people might have to make a certain decision. Some people might not have to. So it's interesting because, it's giving these younger guys a chance to grow up sooner, right? And for some people it works. And for others, you might see and it just like, you try to do too much and it didn't work. So it's important to have like a good kingdom and a good, support system behind you to kind of help you and aid that decision because, if you don't have that help, then it's dog eat dog. You know, you're in a sense you're giving these amateurs professional rules. You know, and that's tough for an 18, 19, 20-year-old. You know, a lot of guys nowadays with 20, 24, 25, it might be a little easier for them, you know, because they a little older. So, yeah, it's a lot harder, though, for the younger guys.
You said a powerful few words. You said too much at once. Do you think athletes know, like, what's too much?
No. I think athletes is kind of like, you kind of, in a sense, you get what you're given, right? Or you take what you take what's given, and if you're given a whole lot, that's just what you take. You know, if they gave a little, like they did, you know, when I was in college and before, you kind of just work with what you get, and it's, in a sense, it's more humbling. It's more slow paced, and I feel like you'd be a lot more grateful. But when you can get anything that you want at once, it's hard for a young guy that, you know, obviously the brain is not developed fully. It's hard for a kid to make a decision, a sound decision that makes sense for their life, you know?
So what do you tell them? Because we're going to talk to a bunch of quarterbacks over the summer at Elite 11 around the concept of chasing what matters.
Yeah.
And like finding what matters most with great clarity and actually being confident in it.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like, because you're right, so much is given to athletes.
Yeah.
And I'm into that. Cool, have as much as you want.
Yeah.
Have whatever it is you deserve. But what would you say to them to make sure that it doesn't become reckless and it doesn't impact them in a way that they may not anticipate?
Yeah. I would say, obviously, you know, take what you can get, but also don't say yes to everything. And I think that's kind of the hardest part for younger guys, because it's like, if you tell them that, it's like, why would I say no to this? It's like, because it might not line up with what you represent morally. And I think it's important that you kind of, like I said, they just have to find themselves a lot sooner, which is hard because, you know, you're still a young adult or a preteen, or not preteen, you're still a teen. So it's a lot harder for them to actually make those sound decisions. And you have those younger guys that are mature and are smart. Like I feel like I probably would have handled it well, but me being fair and me just looking at the other side of it, I know some guys that wouldn't handle it well. And it's kind of like a granted, just because, you know, it's the world, and, you know, people are gonna make decisions to the left, decisions to the right, and it's kind of just, hopefully they understand what they're doing at the time, or like sooner than later, because, you know, sometimes it can be too late, you know, and then you're in the transfer portal 3 or 4 times, and, you know, it just kind of, you know, fall by the wayside.
Do you think there's something, well, this is what I think. I think that athletes, like you are a ranking. That's what Arizona fans met first.
Yeah.
What was his ranking? Dual threat athlete.
Yeah.
Right. And then you became a guy who wore a helmet and you wore that logo.
Right.
And you played great. Now, because of the world we're in, you're a transaction.
Right.
And I only say those things because I think that A, they're true, but also B, like the person isn't, it's even harder to get to know who the person is.
Yeah.
And have an expectation for what the transaction should be delivering for you. Right. I'm curious how you see that with athletes being pseudoly swapped out from team to team to team, or choosing to go from team to team versus like building a story at a campus.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it just happens to do with the world we're in, and like how right now everything is pretty like fast paced. You know, everybody wants results now. They want it sooner than late. They want it sooner. They don't even want it later. It's not like I'll wait a little bit. It's like everything is kind of happening so fast that people don't really care about the longevity. People more so care about the temporary, which is, I mean, temporary is not permanent. Temporary is not gonna last. But this world is turned so much into like the now that people don't care about like, oh, in 5 years I could do this or that. It's like, I'm gonna take what I can get right now. I don't care if it's gonna harm me mentally or if it's gonna make me be a certain way. I'm gonna take what I can get, and then it's more so I'll figure it out later, versus kind of like preparing for it now, and, you know, kind of going about it that way, because it's dog eat dog. You know, it's like a pro concept though. You know, like we said, it's not amateur anymore. I mean, you know, when they put a certain amount of funds into a system, you know, it's you in the grown-up world. You know, it's not, you're not playing the little kid game anymore. It's not, you know, obviously it's still fun, but it becomes a lot more business. You know, a lot more business is being done in college football, and, you know, for some it helps. You know, for some it doesn't. And I think that, you know, in due time, I think they'll figure out a better system to kind of help with the mayhem that's been going on, and I hope they do, because it's hard to see, it's hard to watch, and it's hard to give advice to it because it's such a corrupt system. It's like it's hard to kind of feed into it and help it. You know what I'm saying? Versus just maybe bringing a guy to the side and telling them the real versus, the fake.
Over the last couple of years, you've gone back to Tucson.
Yeah.
It's been awesome to watch you on the
Right.
sideline, man. And we've watched Noah Fafita, Tetero McMillan,
Right.
Jonas Savanaya, numerous other players have opportunities, I'm sure, to go elsewhere and double down and be celebrated for that on that campus. What did you think when you saw their announcement, halftime of a basketball game, just the idea of what they did for the school that you attended?
It meant a lot. For me, it shows that there's still good young people in this world. Not every young person is money hungry or want the next thing super fast, and it just kind of showed that they're loyal, and I think that speaks a lot about their personalities as well as the organization, the school itself, and it just showed that obviously you're gonna always get different opportunities, but what is okay with you? Like, what are you morally cool with? You can take that opportunity, but is that gonna really line up with what you believe in, or is it kind of more so the temporary and, all right, I'm gonna get this now and then figure out the rest later? So it speaks a lot, it speaks on their character. I think it was big for them to kind of just all collectively stay together. It means a lot, because just watching it is like, that's something that I did. You know what I'm saying? Obviously I would have had to sit out if I would have transferred from Arizona, but it was an option that could have been. And for me to stay and just kind of like, bear down in a sense, it meant a lot, and I think that, maybe my decision too, my career has, maybe helped them and make their decision. Like, we have a past, or our school, university has a past of for the most part, people stay. Obviously, we aren't the greatest university, right? But we put out, quality players, and we have quality coaches to where I feel like as long as you do your part and you continue to train, and everything will work out exactly how it's supposed to.
Well said. Working out how it's supposed to. NIL didn't exist when you were there, but now, it seems like they're gonna go back to that era and hook it up. Like, what has that been like for somebody who was the face of that era?
Yeah, it means a lot. It makes me feel good. I've gotten a few letters pertaining to the NIL reparation aspect, I guess you would say, and it feels good. Hopefully hopefully I get what I would have gotten when I was in college. I don't think that's too realistic, but hopefully it's something up in that ballpark.
How did they figure it out? Take us inside those letters.
It was more so like do you want to be involved in this action? Yes or no? I don't know if everybody got it, but I do know I got it, and I think that hopefully it means something to them. Hopefully they go back and kind of do some calculations and see like, what would Khalil Tate have done at this time? Let's kind of give them what we're giving these starters. So I think that'll be something that it would mean a lot to me, and hopefully they figure that out really soon. But I think it should be happening before this year is over, before 2025.
Ready, set. Use French fries to go. Yeah, oil from French fries. Turn yesterday's leftovers into today's fuel. More power, lower emissions. 76 renewable diesel fuels all the ways you go, go, go.
So how have you navigated the last few years? Because you're an actor. You were most recently with the Commanders. By the time people listen to this, you might be with another team in the NFL. How have you been able to stay light and navigate the world which is post-collegiate career?
Yeah. Well, it's tough. It's not easy. Especially, like I said, not having the NIL aspect beforehand. Obviously that would have been an easier transition because I would have had those out loud connections versus having to have a quiet connection with somebody or with a company. But it's meant a lot. I think that I just been trying to do everything. Trying to just show myself as well as the world what I can do. The different talents that I do have, the wit that I have, the knowledge that I have, and just show people in myself that it can be done. It's not just you put a helmet on and that's it, you know, because luckily I was blessed enough to play quarterback in college, so people knew my face more than, you know, maybe a defensive back or linebacker, but even with that, you know, just trying to show my face more. That's the main thing, because, you know, playing football, you wear a helmet. You know, a lot of football players think people know them, and they don't at all. You know, you're just a tall guy with muscles, you know? So for me, trying to put my face out there as much as I can just so that when I do end up getting my opportunity, I can marry it up together, and then it'll be a lot more. I just kind of want to change the perception of an athlete, if that makes sense. I need to figure out a name for what I'm trying to coin, but I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, we want to know about that. You seemingly, when you played, weren't nervous. When you go on set now as an actor, like, what's that like?
It's different. It's a lot more scenes, so you're cutting a lot, and it's a different territory. You know, it's a different beast. But you know, for me, it kind of reminds me like when I first started playing football. You know, the early stages, obviously, you know, you're a little nervous in a sense, you know, because this is the first time. You know, you got these big cameras and lights, and they're just on you the entire time. You know, it's not like they're going away, and you kind of gotta have the same facial expression at the same time every time, and it can be tough at times. But I think that, you know, just working with different people, you know, being around different actors and being around different sets, you kind of just learn and you pick up different tips and different things that can help you out.
What's been like the most challenging or most exciting moment as an actor on set?
So for episode 100 of All American season 6.
Can you spend some pacing here? On the pod. Let's go, give some love.
So we filmed it at the Rose Bowl. And that was a big deal for me because that's where I scored my first collegiate touchdown. And they actually had me score as well on the show. So it was a full circle thing for me, you know, just kind of being able to be a part of that, and actually, you know, just so randomly being at the Rose Bowl, scoring a touchdown. It just it brought it full circle, and it just, you know, reminded me that when I was 17 playing against UCLA, I wouldn't have thought, okay, yeah, in 6 years I'm gonna score a touchdown on All American. You know, like I just kind of didn't think of that. So that was a full circle moment for me because it's a big deal. You know, even out there they're asking like, man, who scored a touchdown at the Rose Bowl? And they were like, Tate did. And I was like, you know, but it was a big deal. You know, it made me feel good. It made me feel fulfilled in the sense of I don't think anybody else can say they've scored a touchdown in the Rose Bowl and then on All-American. You know, so I like to think that that accolade is pretty shelved.
Yeah, we gotta get that in a card game or something.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
for sure.
Hey, what's your mental health like now?
It's really good. Early on, or not early, yeah, like when I first left college, it was harder. You know, obviously when I came out, it was COVID. That was that year. So I feel like everybody's mental health was, you know, a certain way. And then obviously those following like 1 or 2 years, you know, trying to get out of it as far as mentally get it out of your head, you know, because during COVID, everybody was in their head. You know, it was a lot going on. Not even just football, but, you know, a lot of people got laid off. Mentally, physically, a lot of people, you know, got sick, and it was a time that you really needed family, you know, and I think that having my family with me and, you know, continuing to, you know, get on the Zoom family calls, etc., it meant a lot, and I think it kind of, in a sense, it helped me out, because a lot of people always ask me, like, you know, you think you would have been different if when you came out, everything went as planned. And I think I would have. I don't think I would have been as knowledgeable of life as I am now. I think I kind of would have, you know, obviously got a certain amount of funds, and then obviously I would have been a good person still, but it would have been harder, you know, not having gone through the things that I have gone through, you know, still being, you know, relatively young at 25. I think I'm able to see it for what it is, and, you know, luckily, I'm just blessed that it happened sooner than later, you know, because like I said, it could happen when I get older, and I think it's harder because you just spent more time being who you were, and it's harder to get out of it if you're older.
Yeah, I think people really, you know, a lot went on in COVID, but what was kind of forgotten was the traditional steps of sport, right? There was no mini camps. There's no rookie mini camps. Like, rosters were limited for not just that year, but the next year. Like, somebody like you.
So when I first got picked up, because it was during COVID. When I first got picked up April 2020, I was obviously wanting the quarterback opportunity, but my agent ended up telling me like, all right, the Eagles want you, but at receiver. So I'm like, okay, cool. I was virtual. Everything was virtual, right? Even during camp, everything was virtual. So I was virtual from April until July, and then they released me before we got in person. Because they were like, you know what, it's COVID, it's a lot going on. We about to start training camp, but we just want somebody that has played receiver. Like we just need a body that, we don't have to develop them, but they just know how to play receiver in a sense. So that was my first introduction to like, I got released before I got out there. I wasn't even out there yet. They called me before camp and was like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and let you go. We think you can do it. However, just based off of life, right? We're gonna go ahead and sign somebody else that is more comfortable and somebody that plays receiver, because I'm making that transition. I'm considered a transitional experience. I'm an experiment in a sense, going from quarterback to receiver. So, yeah, that was my introduction to it, and then, yeah.
Yeah, you made the full transition now to wideout.
Right, yeah. So it's been early on it was tough because I was still trying to do both, trying to do quarterback and receiver, right? But you can't throw it to yourself. So it got hard. However, I ended up signing with a new agency, Somewhat Sports, based out of the Bay Area, and basically, the main thing was, all right, let's figure out, what these NFL teams want me at. Let's figure out that first, and then all the teams were saying like, we want him at receiver. But my old agent, I didn't necessarily know, I didn't know that, right? So I was still trying to do both, not knowing that it wasn't gonna matter anyway, So, I've been training with Deshaun Jackson a lot, which is one of my close friends, Steve Calhoun, training with him. And it's been easier kind of just dedicating everything to one versus trying to do both, because I played quarterback my entire life. So it's obviously, you want to fine tune, but that's not, I can throw, so, but running a route is different, so actually being able to get my body fully transformed, I've been training at Full Circle Athletics, which is my gym with Coach Cash, and he's been helping me out a lot. Just transforming my body. I think that's the main thing with making that transition and, trying to be the best athlete that I could be is you just have to dedicate it. You have to dedicate 100% to it. You can't kind of do 50 or 60 and try to do something else. You got to lose weight, so you can get lighter. Obviously I'm a fast guy, but it's a difference between quarterback fast and receiver fast. So I've been working with those guys. It's helped me a lot, helped me a lot in my development and, really trying to just excel. And I think this is like my 6th month officially like at receiver, like since I've came out, right? And like I said, I just did mini camp with the Commanders, so everything went well, went really well.
I gotta ask, because I can vividly remember Deshaun Jackson at summer camp when I was coaching at USC.
Okay.
And it was the greatest one-day camp. I think myself, Sark, Lane, Pete, like any of us had ever seen, and definitely them, because they'd seen way more than I had at the time. What is it like training with one of the great receivers in college history, one of the most explosive players in recent NFL history?
Yeah. No, it means a lot. We play for the same Pop Warner team, the Inglewood Jets. So I know his coaches, he knows my coaches, and it's crazy because when I first officially met him, it was during the 2020 year during COVID. But remember, everything was virtual. So I was talking to him like, yeah, I know, such and such. And he's like, yeah, such and such. And then they ended up releasing me. So we never got to kind of, fully establish a relationship. But it was a random, like Wednesday, we were training in the marina, me and Jane Harris. And basically, we saw a dude riding a bike, like going real fast around the walk path. And I'm just like, dude look familiar. And mind you, I never met him in person before. I'm like, D-Jack. So he ended up stopping the bike. It was him. I'm like, what's up? I'm like, what you doing? So this is when this before he got with the Ravens. So I'm like, what you doing out here? He like, man, I'm just chilling. I'm like, all right. I'm like, trying to work out. He like, I'm about to have my cousin go get my cleats. And then got the cleats, started working out, and that's how we built that bond. And then later that year, he ended up going to the Ravens. So in a sense, I kind of like, I was still at quarterback, so I kind of in a sense helped him get that juice back. And then, yeah, ever since then, we just been locked in, and that's my boy.
You grew up in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Played in the Pac-12, and now your school's going to the Big 12. What do you think about that?
It's too bad. it sucks. I mean, you know, the Pac-12 is so historic. It's so much history behind it. So many great teams, great players. You know, unfortunately, more than ever before, this is a really money-hungry college football time period. So unfortunately, you know, there's no more Pac-12, but we have a lot. You know, we produce a lot of talent, a lot of great coaches, a lot of teams, and it's just historic to have a West Coast conference. You know, because obviously you have the other conferences as well, but to have to me, a powerhouse in the Pac-12, I think in a few years, like people they'll regret it. Like maybe we should have kept them, you know, and it's gonna be too late. Obviously, I can still bring it back in 10 years or 12 years, whatever. But as of right now, it's too bad, you know, because it means so much to the West Coast. You know, the West Coast is a place too. You know, I know the South and the East, they have a lot of good teams, but there's also a West Coast of the map, you know, and you have to respect that. And you know, I hope those teams, you know, go to the Big Ten and Big 12 and do well and excel, you know, and really just show, you know, these decision makers, these teams are really good, you know, because they're in these new conferences and they're winning the league. So what does that tell you? You know, it's easy to say these conferences are better because of X, Y, Z, but once these teams get in these actual conferences and win, it's not going to be a lot of room to kind of use excuses like they have been.
If Arizona and Utah playing the Big 12 title game, the irony will be thick.
Man,
will be thick, which it could happen,
yeah,
right? It really could.
It can.
Brennan, I've known Brent for a long time. Yeah. I know you've gotten to know him. What's your early impressions of what he's been able to do heading into his first season in Arizona?
So it's funny. He actually recruited me out of high school. He was at Oregon State, and he was a receiver coach. So I've had, like, it's crazy. I had his number. Like, I have Coach Brennan with Oregon State in parentheses. So I obviously had to change it. But yeah, I met him before. I think he was a good pickup for a university. You know, obviously, you know, losing Jed Fish was very hurtful. You know, because he brought so much to the program, to the school, and he gave us so much life. But I think, you know, the next successor in Brennan, I think that's the best guy for the job. You know, having an Arizona history. You know, just being a guy. You know, not a super big time guy, but somebody that'll just get the job done. I think he brings a lot of wit and a lot of knowledge to the University of Arizona. It helps that, you know, a lot of the Arizona players stayed, and it kind of just, I think they'll do well. And obviously, I think they might have some rough patches, you know, just because it's a new coach. Hopefully they don't, but, you know, just knowing football, you know, they might run into some rough patches, but I think they're enough of a unit to where I don't think it would affect them that much. So.
You'll love this story because you're rocking a Lakers hat. He came on this show a couple months ago, and in his year where he won the Mountain West at San Jose State, afterwards he wanted to figure out, like, how do we have continuous success? Okay. So he spent his whole offseason talking to coaches who had continuous success, one being Phil Jackson. And I think there's this beautiful element of him where he's like a true seeker, which I think you are as well, and most quarterbacks are that achieve at a high level of constantly have this thirst for knowledge. And Brent is one of the best culture coaches I think I've ever been around and watched. And I wasn't surprised. I was like, just talk to Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on and on of the people he's talked to.
That's a real big deal. Phil Jackson, he's the greatest of all time to me. So, yeah.
Amen. This podcast, we rebranded it. It's called Y Option, and the whole idea is that it's college football through the lens of the West Coast.
Yeah.
Because it's often through the lens of another part of the country.
Right.
What do you think people need to know about college football through the lens of the West Coast?
The West Coast is a place. Like, it's not just the South. It's not only the SEC. It's not only the Big 10, the Big 12. Like, California, and as well as the West Coast, you know, Arizona, and go down the line, we have football as well. You know, I feel like we produced a lot of talent, a lot of great teams, a lot of great coaches. And I feel like it's such because it's just easier for them to say the West Coast football is not good. It's just easy to say. I don't know why. I guess it's easy for it to roll off their tongue and say the West Coast is not good. You know, obviously when you have, you know, the teams down south that, you know, they win a lot and they win well. But I think now these days the playing field is even. You know, I think the funds that have been generated and that have been going to one region are now starting to be all over. You know, and I think that makes it probably tough for those other teams to compete because now you're competing against somebody that is on the equal playing field. You know what I'm saying? And I think that makes them have to respect it more, you know, because it's not just you don't have the leverage that you once had. You know, obviously, you know, you probably had a history of, you know, having a winning program, et cetera, but as far as getting the talent that, you know, you want, it's starting to become a very even playing field. And I love that for, you know, the West Coast teams, you know, like the USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Arizona. I love that for them, you know, just because it just shows the world that when the playing field is even, the conversation is different, you know. So I think going forward we'll see that, especially with, you know, the college football expansion, you know, the playoffs. So I think we'll see that this year.
Yeah, I tend to agree. By the time this airs, you might be on a flight to a training camp.
For sure.
If so, what is a team, what's a franchise going to get with you based on a lot of the experiences that we touched upon today?
Yeah. Somebody that's a wealth of knowledge. I like to learn. I like to be around good people. That's probably the main thing. I'm a very hard worker, and anybody you can ask can tell you. I'm always positive. That's, you know, another main thing. Versatile. I can do, you know, whatever is asked, whatever need be, and I'm super coachable. I think that's the main thing for me to continue to prove, not only to people but to myself, that I can be coached. You know, you can tell me to do one thing and I can do it to a T. You know, so that's the main thing for me.
Yeah, there's so many things I think about when I think about you, man. Elite performer for sure, but I think about your parents, educators, think about you getting your degree, think about you as just a guy in the community. Like, you got so many traits, and I hope you're on every roster that is possible in football. Right. At some point, we'll get you on the Paris Musketeers, maybe like 10 years from now. But I do just want to share with you, man, like, you have this beautiful light about you, and you always have since we met when you were a teenager. And it's cool because all the things that you learned and showcased in football, they're going to come out in acting, they're going to come out in your future family, as a friend, as a father, whatever it is. And I know you won't forget that. But I'm also here to remind you of that.
For sure. No, I appreciate it. No, it's important to remind people of things. You know, I feel like, you know, obviously I can feel that on my own, but like just hearing that it's a big deal for me because you don't always hear that. And I feel like, you know, obviously with these days, with, you know, us being on our phone so much, people think that we talk to people more than we do, and we don't. Like, we talk, like, say this morning, right? If you text me, you might be one of the 2 people to text me all day, right? But because with social media, we feel like everybody's talking to everybody. Like, it's not as many intimate conversations as people might think, which is, for me, it's a big deal hearing that from you because it's like, you know, we're having a real conversation, right? I probably won't have another real conversation until in 5 days. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important for, like, you know, even the younger people to hear, like, just because you're on your phone don't mean these people are talking. You know, obviously we're seeing what people are doing, but we're not having conversations that can, you know, further ourselves like we are right now.
So athletes have always had a voice.
Right.
Now they just have more of a microphone.
Yeah, for sure.
You had a microphone.
Yeah.
Rich Rodriguez gets let go.
Right.
And there's a coaching search.
Yeah.
And you went to your mobile device, formerly called Twitter, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but I think it was, "I'm not a triple option quarterback."
I didn't come here to run a triple option.
I didn't come here to run a triple option. There you go.
So, looking back, I probably shouldn't have done that way. But so how it happened was, you know, obviously, like I said, me and the former AD, Dave Hickey, and President Robbins, we used to go to the Arizona basketball games. I think, DeAndre Ayton, he was there. He was still there. He was a freshman, one and done. But he was there, and we used to go to the games, sit courtside, and we just used to talk about, like, who we should get, right, and whatnot. And I think I told him, there was a few options I had. I think I told him, but it wasn't the option that ended up coming out. So I get on my phone one day, and I see, like, it's a tweet, and obviously I don't know how accurate it was. I think it was pretty accurate, but it said, like, Arizona closing in on the coach. And I'm like, this is news to me. Like, I'm seeing it like like everybody else is. So I didn't like that. I felt like, how is this happening? Like, we just had talked about, you know, who we wanted to be the coach, and that name was not brought up at all. And you know, no shame on him, like, no shade on him. I wasn't familiar with him, really. I didn't know he was a triple option offense. And I can run well, right? But that don't necessarily mean I want to run every down, you know? I think that offense, it's a good offense for, you know, certain talented teams. I think for me, after having my sophomore year and, you know, being able to show that I can run and pass, I wanted to show that I could throw the ball too. My next year or next year after that. And I felt like getting that coach, I might not necessarily would have been the way to show, okay, he can pass too, you know? So yeah, I went to Twitter, I made a tweet, I deleted it, I thought I did something. Made the tweet, I think it's set for like, maybe like 5-10 minutes, and I was like, I'm gonna just delete it. Did nothing for me. It was I came back the next day, it was blown up. I see it on the ESPN ticker. I'm like, oh, this is real. And that's when I kind of realized the power I did have that I didn't think I had. You know, because I was more so kind of tweeting it like, this is just what I'm feeling at this time right now. Obviously, I didn't shame anybody or, you know, say any names, but I just, you know, said I didn't come here to do this. And that was real, you know, because obviously I felt like there was no other way for me to get my point across. Like nobody else was gonna hear me. And I feel like doing that, I don't know how it ended up happening, but he ended up not being the coach. So I don't know if what I said affected that. I'm assuming it did. I don't know if, you know, he kind of didn't want to, you know, come to Arizona after that, or I'm not sure if our AD saw it or president saw it and was like, all right, let's not do that. But I just was not aware. And I felt like I had a lot of responsibility as far as being able to help choose the next coach because I had the season that I did have. So it's like, whoever we pick, I needed to suit me, you know, because I'm kind of the one that has brought this notoriety and this power to this program to even have this platform. So
yeah, I wonder if it happened now, because we're in a world where new coaches come and they bring their own players.
Yeah.
Right? Or they come and embrace the players that are there, or the players are like, no, I'm going to go with the guy who left. Like, right. I wonder what Khalil Tate would think now in this era.
If that was to happen, I mean, I wouldn't have to say anything. Yeah. I think it would be. I would have previously probably said other things, versus that tweet was just that tweet. Because you know, at that time it was like the only time you probably heard my voice was in like a post-game interview. That was it, and I was talking about how the game went. I wasn't talking about like, what do you think about this coach? It was just more so about football. So that was my kind of like. That was my like intro to, you know, my podcast take, if that makes sense. And it worked. Yeah. You know, like I said, I was on the bottom of the ESPN ticker and I was in shock because I'm like, oh. But fun fact too, it's crazy. I spelled triple wrong. I said I didn't come here to run a triple option. I think I might have spelled it with like 3 P's. I was so upset though. It was impulsive. It was so impulsive. I typed it in, and after I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I spelled it wrong. But at that time, there's no edit. You know, you can't edit the tweet. So, but I think for me, I think it kind of helped my point because I think it kind of brought more. And he spelled it wrong. Like, at least you see it. Yeah, keep sharing it. You know, keep letting people know how I feel, regardless of how I spelled it.
It's an interesting fact that you bring up because. Yes, if you lived in this era, you would have gotten paid.
Yeah.
But in addition, the era also is multi-platform. I felt like people really never got to know you. I got to know you because I knew you since you were a kid. Yeah. But like, I think there's something to that of like the good thing about the NIL era and the era we're in now is like, there's an opportunity to share your story.
Yeah.
Now, are people doing it responsibly?
Yeah.
I don't know. You could debate that. That's why I do Elite 11 and do media training and hopefully help some guys. But you had this story that you were painted as, in my opinion, he's going to try to dictate who the coach is.
Yeah.
Who does he think he is? Or, yeah, he should go do that. Versus, there's a young man who comes from an amazing home, who education has been the forefront of his life. Like, there's stories, like, you never shared you.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was certain, like, people in the media that, like, they had I used to like even just see some of the stuff that said about me. And I'm just like, it's crazy because I'm not that. But however, because I'm not able to have that conversation with that person or like have a, you know, I see Noah Fafita, him and T-Mac, they have a podcast of their own, right? So they speaking on, they giving people, you know, kind of in a sense who they are, you know, like, all right, this how I laugh or this how I joke, you know. So they have an idea versus for me, it was like, all right, I was a good football player, and then now I have an attitude in the post game because we just lost by 45 to Washington State and Garner Minshew, you know, and Pullman in the cold in November, and I have an attitude, which is, you know, rightfully so, and now I'm like a bad guy. Like I'm just upset. I think that's pretty normal. You know, obviously I could have. There's different cases where I could have, you know, had more maturity within like post-game interviews, but for the most part, like, you know, I'm upset. Like I'm not gonna smile and be happy. You know, we just lost, and it does something to our program. So yeah, that's the main thing, man. Just I think now it's helpful because I think people or the fans that I do have from Arizona or from college, they see me now and be like, oh, like, are you really like you a cool person? Like, yeah, I've been this cool person. You know, I just wasn't able to, in a sense, show that because, you know, there was no NIL, there was no way for me to really, I'll put it this way, it would have cost too much to be able to do what these kids are doing now as far as, you know, getting this podcast equipment. They could probably get it sent to them from a company for free. Like, so it's a lot more convenient for them to be able to, you know, express themselves and who they are, and versus for me, I was just trying to, you know, trying to play football, I was just trying to be cool. I thought I was being cool, you know. I mean, it turns out they had this narrative of me, and it's like, I'm opposite of that if you get to speak to me, and it just sucks because now I'm grateful that these kids are able to reap the benefits of that, but it's crazy because I know people that are, you know, older than me, they went through the opposite of that, you know, as far as getting blackballed for XYZ based off of whatever these people are thinking, you know, and they didn't have a voice to be able to say, nah, this is what happened, or that's what happened, because, you know, obviously the higher powers dictate a lot, so, yeah.
Well said, man.
Yeah.
You've had quite a journey.
Man.
And you're just 25.
Man, it's crazy. I feel like I've lived like 5 different lives, like maybe 6, like in my entire life. Like, you know, the high school All-American, you know, the freshman in college that's not playing, the sophomore in college that's the star, you know, coming out, being a senior, going through COVID, you know, transitioning from quarterback to receiver, you know, doing other, you know, little gigs in between time, going to Canada, playing out there for a little bit. It's been fun. I wouldn't have thought in a million years this is how it would have went, obviously, because nobody thinks that. You know, nobody really, or a lot of people don't think that as far as, you know, when you're a college football player, you're thinking like either NFL where, all right, I'm going to use this to graduate early, et cetera. And I think for me, since I've always been like an in-the-moment type of person, I was just thinking about right then, like, I'm in college, right? I try to just make sure that I really get the best out of whatever situation it is by just being in the moment versus trying to think too much and wait, but if I do this, I can't do that. So I just was I'm mellow. I try to just like float. Obviously I'm a hard worker, but I try to float for the most part and just, you know, get my hands in different baskets and, you know, try to show people that, you know, I'm a lot more than a football player, but I'm also like just a good person that, you know, I want to get seen as that more than like just only the good football player. So that's been my my journey. That's been my path, and I'm just trying to continue to show people that I'm cool. Like, 'cause I feel like also too a lot of, you know, sports players or entertainers, they don't really be like cool. They obviously they're good at their sport or they're a good actor, but like they aren't like genuine, down to earth, have a regular conversation. They just kind of strange when you meet them, and it sucks, you know. But for me, I'm trying to bridge that gap and just show the younger people like you could be yourself and be cool versus trying to be whoever you seeing on the internet and trying to mimic that style. Like, just be you, you know, and being you should get you far enough, you know, versus feeling like you got to be somebody else and now you and you being, you know, somebody totally different.
Khalil, you've always been in your own skin, and even more so now at 25. I appreciate you sharing today, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
You got it.
It's the Afterglow, Jim Thornby, Yogi Roth. That was Khalil Tate, presented by our founding partner, 76. We dive into what did we learn, what do we wish that we asked, what were we excited about? Jim, you were in the room for this one, man. What were your thoughts as you listened to this back and we shared it with our community here at Y Option?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool how he just, you know, to this day continues to try and find a way through, you know, whether, you know, whether he's going to be a quarterback or a wide receiver or an actor or, what have you. Khalil, he's just got that, that I don't even know how to describe it, but he's got, that certain special thing about him that is, he's going to find a way to succeed any way he can. So it was cool to spend that time with him and kind of, relive those moments and, harken back to the Rich Rod days at Arizona, which, were some fun times, some turbulent times, and kind of, things that won't be forgotten, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think no one will ever forget Khalil Tate's run. I think a couple things stand out. Like you reference his, like, what is that it factor? Like he's got a great charisma to him, and I don't think people really got a chance to see that at Arizona, because after that special season, there's changes, right? And how is Khalil Tate going to navigate those changes? In came a guy named Grant Gunnell, and all of a sudden it felt to me like Khalil Tate wasn't playing free, wasn't playing with tremendous confidence. And he shared part of that. That was a hard time for him when he went from being on the cover of SI to really not being put on the, I don't want to say pedestal, but I think that he earned the right to have a better season or a better finish in Arizona. And I think now looking back, what I've always enjoyed most, it was really since Jed Fish took over and now with Brennan, is that he's always welcomed. He's always welcomed back with open arms, which to me is huge for that program. I think you should do it with every alumni, but especially someone like that. Nothing makes me smile more, Jim, than when I see a basketball game, he's on the sideline with an Arizona jersey on, right? Or he's leading the team out of the tunnel or tweeting about the program and how proud he is. So I love that. I think the question I have that we'll all have is what's going to happen around payments to athletes in the 8-year window of this NIL world. Like basically, like if you play within a certain number of years from when NIL began, you're going to be owed a certain amount of money. And you and I have done enough conversations with athletic directors or administrators to be like, how are you figuring this thing out? And I don't think anybody knows. I think that's going to be really interesting because I think the value that Khalil Tate brought to Arizona is pretty high, man. Like you could argue it's higher than T-Mac and Noah, right? Like at least from his peak, right? Those guys were close. Like they beat SC. Maybe that was a year ago. But right now, I think in my career, yeah, it's a great point. Maybe they peaked higher when they decided they were coming back. Like that was a moment.
That was definitely a moment.
Yeah.
So and it was cool how he kind of embraced that, with Khalil, being so excited about that moment as well. So it kind of bring that whole thing full circle there.
Yeah, that's a great call. That'll be a fun storyline to track. And then overall, I think to your point of what he's doing, and we always urge all the athletes to come on the show or retire. I just talked to Matt Barkley, who is going to be doing some stuff for the Big Ten Network this fall. And I think he's like officially, maybe not done, but maybe done, kind of one of those years as a quarterback. But it's a transition. It's a big transition. And here's Khalil Tate, who's, you can watch him on All-Americans on the CW. He's an actor. He's an extra. He's got lines. Like he's doing a bunch of really cool stuff. And I love that he's just following his passion. Now, I will say this, Jim, before we get out of here. There's a huge part of me. That I hope one day he follows fellow Arizona alum Jason Johnson out to Paris and he decides he wants one more run at quarterback and comes and plays the Paris Musketeers. Khalil, you could play anything you want. You want to play linebacker, you want to play safety, you want to play receiver. We don't care, bro. You always got a spot with the Musketeers.
Love it.
Yeah.
Viva la Khalil.
Yeah, amen. Khalil Tate out the gate. I don't know how you say that in French, but we'll figure it out, man. The recruiting pitch is on, and it is on. Football season is on. We are less than 2 weeks away from the full-on week 1. Week 0 is coming up in a matter of days. So enjoy. Don't go crazy this weekend. Like sit back, casually, let yourself get involved and enthralled with the game. If you need anything, just come ping us here at Y Option. We've got a nice little library from this summer. You can nerd out on quarterback play. We got a great coaching philosophy podcast coming up with somebody who I think you're going to absolutely love. And of course, the newsletters from the road on my training camp tour. Just got back from Arizona, Michigan, and Michigan State. So you'll read about that as well at yoption.com. All right, everybody, stay safe. We'll talk soon. Peace.